Not the Footy Show.
Australia, the holders of the World Cup, they won it at Eden Park in front of 47,000 people back in 1988. You were a member of that side, were you not, Mr. Norton?
No, Ravs. I actually played in the new series, the last year series. I played in the first World Cup game we played in 1989 in Auckland.
There they are, the skippers, both wearing number 4. Gary Schofield and Mal Meninga. This crowd in fine voice, and we're in for one tremendous sporting occasion as we bring you the World Cup final on the wide world of sports. Wherever you're watching us, sit back and enjoy it as Mal Meninga kicks off. The World Cup final is underway. Dennis Betts is the first of the Great Britain players to come back and reach the reception committee from Australia.
G'day everybody, welcome to episode 263 of Not the Footy Show. It's the off-season Roberto Cocksmith. I'm Warrick Nicholson. Penrith Panthers, they won the premiership, but that's not what we're talking about anymore. That's the way rugby league works. The season's over, it's done with. Who cares about it, except for Paul Kent. But we have a World Cup coming up, buddy, and that's the topic of discussion today, is the Australian Rugby League World Cup squad for the 2021, not 2022 Rugby League World Cup, Cocksmith. That's going to be annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's other things that are annoying about the World Cup, which I'm sure we'll delve into as well, mate. But it's all around numbers, isn't it, really? 2021. Why not just name it the 2022 and be done with it? You know? Yeah.
I know.
Semantics, mate. Semantics.
I know. Speaking of that, we also have squad numbers this year, which is very, very interesting. Saving on the laundry / the price of jerseys while you're over there for the World Cup. It's going to look weird having Daly Cherry-Evans in number 2 and Nathan Cleary in number 14, although that's where he could play. Who knows? And Regan Campbell-Gillard at 5'8". I like that idea.
I'd doubt it. I think you can cut Nathan's number in half, and that's where he'll be playing, mate.
Very, very good.
I look again. I'm a traditionalist, mate. I mean, if you can't afford the jerseys, don't play the game. Why are we doing this? Are we doing this for the minnows so they don't have to buy more jerseys? I mean,
it could be.
They should have a jersey per game.
It should be a jersey. There should be money set aside from the World Cup committee at the very least to say, well, you know, we'll look after you in this regard. I'm sure they're in England. It's not like they can't get a jersey made.
A sponsor should come on board or whatever. A jersey per game.
Yeah.
If they're playing 6 games, there should be 6 jerseys.
Here's the thing that hasn't been thought of that much: jersey swaps.
Well, they're not going to be able.
Are they allowed to jersey swap now? If the whole idea is to save on jerseys, are they allowed to jersey swap?
Look, put it this way. This is what I think, and I'm only guessing, but I reckon Australia, if they're playing 6 games, we'll probably have 6 jerseys, but all with weird numbers on them.
Yeah.
I mean, are there some countries out there that can only afford 2 sets of jerseys?
Maybe. But that's what I'm saying. So the jersey swap, every time you play Australia, some teams might not be able to give their jersey to Australia. Australia's not the concern. Can Scotland give away their jerseys at the end of the game? I think we might be more concerned with someone like Fiji or Cook Islands, or it's a strange. I'm sure they've thought of all this, smarter people than us, but it's going to look very weird because some countries are going to do it as per what their probable team is going to be. So the fullback's going to be in one, etc. But we've done it from I think it's longevity or amount of test matches for Australia.
Mate, it's just too clever, mate. Someone's too clever.
Yes, indeed. Mal Meninga announced the squad that Peter V'landys also picked. I think people will remember that. He's on the selection panel for the Australian team. Here is the squad in their squad numbers, so take it with a grain of salt. James Tedesco, he is captain. Daly Cherry-Evans, Ben Hunt, Valentine Holmes, Jake Trbojevic, Regan Campbell-Gillard, Cameron Munster, Latrell Mitchell, Josh Addo-Carr, Jack Wighton, Cameron Murray, Matt Burton, Pat Carrigan, Nathan Cleary, Lindsay Collins, Ruben Cotter, Angus Crichton, Tino, I'm not going to butcher your last name, sorry, buddy, Campbell Graham, Harry Grant, Liam Martin, Jeremiah Nanai, Marion Talangi, and Isaiah Yo. That's the squad. Anyone there that you are surprised they got in before we get to the snubs?
No. Well, yeah, probably a one or two.
Angus Crichton's a bit of a surprise getting in there after his performance in Origin.
It's a little bit of a surprise. I'm not going to base it on Origin. I'm going to base it on the year, to be honest. Look, it's going to be unpopular with Queenslanders, but I don't know why they're taking Daly Cherry-Evans.
To be perfectly honest. The word. Incumbent, apparently.
When was what, in 2019?
That's the whole point. That's the hilarious part about it, is that he used that reasoning of why DCE not only is in the squad, but could be halfback because he's the incumbent, and then dropped Damien Cook. Last time I checked, he was the incumbent and had been there for a while. Like, what's the...
Okay, yeah, he's the incumbent from 2019, so that shouldn't really count. But let's look at what the halfbacks who are vying for that 7 jersey have done in the last 3 years. Like, let's say, what was Nathan Cleary up to in 2019? He was still an emerging rookie, really.
He was 3 years into his. He was 3 or 4 years into his career. He wasn't. He'd been around for a while.
Well, he's 24 now. 3 years ago, he was 21. I think he debuted at 19.
2015 or 16 was his first foray into first grade.
Okay, so he's 2 or 3 years into it. But in 2020, 2021, and 2022, he played in grand finals, and in 2 of those, he won with his team. Look, I'll say this. I'll say that Daly Cherry-Evans played pretty good this year in Origin, but I think consistently over the last 3 years, the best halfback in the competition and maybe the world has been Nathan Cleary.
We just haven't had Test football to have that question be asked. That's the problem.
Yeah, correct. I'm not going to boot it into DC because this will be his last Kangaroos foray, I would suggest. But I would have probably taken another young halfback. Maybe someone like Nico Hines. He's just won the Daly M. He's not going.
Yeah.
So I think he was maybe a little bit unlucky to miss out.
Edwards, Cook, and Hines are the 3 emergencies. So if there's an injury, they may come in.
And I think 2 of those guys are really desperately unlucky not to go. And I think Hines and Edwards. Cook's had his day, mate. I think he's had his day. I think that there are other hookers around that are probably playing a little bit better. And Cook's had a great career and will do for the next 2 or 3 years. But Crichton's a bit of a weird one. DCE for mine is a weird one. He's got enough going on at home, which we'll cover off in another podcast.
Yeah.
That he could probably just do with a nice off season and worry about Manly.
I think you're being harsh on Damien Cook because the Rabbitohs did make a run at the end of the year and they made it to the prelim final and they've made 5 prelims finals in a row and he's been a big reason for that. I think you're being harsh on Damien Cook in saying that he's passed it, but I get it. I mean, look, Ben Hunt had a great Origin series playing at hooker. Harry Grant was okay at Origin. I wouldn't say he was outstanding in that series. He played well in, I think, one of the games really well. I get the idea that this is Mal Meninga's team. I think you said that before we started recording. He's got the side he wants, and that's really all that matters. I'm fine that the coach of Australia picks the team he wants. You can talk about snubs and whatever. It's not on us. It's not on whether we like a player or not, and that's why Edwards, I think, didn't get picked. He played as good as he could have, and he won the Clive Churchill. Congratulations, wow. But he ain't better than James Tedesco, and he's not going to get picked ahead of Cam Munster, Valentine Holmes, or Latrell Mitchell at fullback if we need him to play fullback. It's just not going to happen. So unless he was going to get picked on the wing, he wasn't making the squad.
I agree. I just would have thought that, given he could be a winger or he could be a fullback. I know that there's other guys in there that can play fullback as well. But I reckon if he was chosen in that team, he'd be the second best fullback in the team. And as far as Cook goes, I know you're a fanboy, right?
I am.
But if he went, he would be the 3rd best hooker in Australia going, because I think Grant is number 1, and I think Appy Coruscant is right up his clacker.
I can't pick Appy. I know I got picked for Origin, but
you're just dirty. You're dirty on Appy about Origin last year. You're still dirty on that.
He's not a better player.
You don't think so? Okay. You've been smoking something this morning, mate? What are you on?
No, I'm waiting for Appy to take the Tigers to the promised land next year.
That's not going to happen either. Even Appy knows that.
He's so good, though. That's what you keep telling me. The team and the squad.
Player don't make a team.
We've talked about Edwards not making it. Look, there are players that have made the back line who aren't better than Edwards, but it's about fit. It's about what Mal Meninga wants. Let's get to, the fact that those other players have missed out.
Before you go any further, just entertain me for one moment. Who do you think's playing on the wings? Who are your wingers?
Well, number 2 is Daly Cherry-Evans, and number 5 is Jake Trbojevic. So there's your wingers, mate.
Tell me who your wingers are. Tell me who you think Mal's wingers are.
Josh Adokar is a lock. He will be on the left wing. Mark it down. I think he'll be playing outside Latrell. So I think you can almost guarantee that'll be the mix on the left. The right-hand side is interesting because Marion Talangi, doesn't he play left wing? The Cowboys? I thought he played left wing. So
maybe he does, but I've never taken too much notice.
Well, Felt plays on the right, so
yeah, you're right.
He's been on the wing, so he's a left winger. He can play on the right. There's no dramas. Campbell Graham is the other winger in the squad, and yes, he has played right wing quite a bit in the past, and probably if he'd played for New South Wales, that's where he would have got a run. So they're the other two wingers, and then it's the question of this is why I'm asking you a question. This is why it's got the decision of is Val Holmes a centre for Australia or is he a winger? That's the question.
Well, he's definitely not a better centre than Jack Wighton, and I don't have a blue hat on saying that. He's definitely not a better inclusion in the team than Jack Wighton.
Is Jack Wighton right centre? That's how he has to play if Latrell is at left centre.
Absolutely, and I think he can, and I think he will. I think the only other place for Jack Wighton is 14, but I think he's a waste at 14. To be honest, I think he takes too long to come into the game. I think he needs to start, and I don't believe that Val Holmes, as good a player as he is a better right centre than Jack Wighton can be.
To answer the question, then, our team is better with Val Holmes on the wing because Wighton is a superior player to a Campbell Graham or a Murray.
Correct.
That's the answer. And so, as far as I'm concerned with Australia, you pick the best players you can in the squad, and you find places for them. So Jack Wighton better be practicing a lot at right centre because I think that's where he'll be with Val Holmes on his right wing. I like that back line: Tedesco, Adokar, Mitchell, Wighton, Holmes, Munster, and Cleary. Even if it is DCE, that's a back line that's going to beat a lot of teams in this World Cup.
You know what I think? You know what I think is going to get Cleary the nod? Not because I think he's better than DCE, which I do think he's better, but I think Isaiah Yeo at 13, and he will be at 13.
Yep,
is going to be that little duo there, Cleary and Yeo. Is, to use one of your words, is absolutely delicious, and that you want those guys in your team. Those two.
Well, it lets Cleary play the role he plays.
Correct.
And I don't know if DCE is going to be as happy being second receiver as often as Cleary is with Yeo at 13 playing that role. Because if DCE plays at 7, does Yeo play more of a running role?
Yeah, I think you're wasting him if you do. But either way, I mean, I guess the other way you could play it is Murray at 13 and Yeo off the bench.
I love Murray on the edge. Murray on the edge for New South Wales when he's been not knocked out has been the business for us. He'll be next to. Well, that's the question: is does Murray play on the left side or Martin on the right? Because they'll be the two back rowers.
Martin's a right side player, isn't he? That's where he's been playing for Penrith. I'm trying to stretch my mind back to think of Murray on the left.
Well, he's played. So what's happened with South is when Joey Arrow's gone in the middle. At times they've pushed Murray out into the left edge. So he's definitely played that role. So I think that is where we end up with for the back row. I got no qualms with that. The front row is the interesting one, Cocksmith, because we've got a couple of big boys, a couple of older lads, guys like Ruben Cotter. What is your starting front row? Because I think you've got to go with what is playing to the strengths of some of the guys we've picked in the squad. just to give you the lowdown of who we've got. Campbell Gillard, Tino, Ruben Cotter, Pat Carrigan, Jake Trbojevic, Lindsay Collins, and Angus Crichton. Those are the players that will play in the middle for Australia. So who are you starting with?
Well, I sent you a team. I sent you a team last week.
The start of the week.
And sorry, the start of the week. And look, we differ a little bit in the way we think, which is great. But my starting front row would be Jake Trbojevic, Regan Campbell-Gillard, and Harry Grant at hooker.
Yep.
There's argument for putting Jake on the bench because he can fill that role pretty well as well, and maybe starting Tino at front row with Regan Campbell-Gillard. And then, by the way, I'm not a Regan Campbell-Gillard fan, to be honest. I rewatched the grand final yesterday, and he and his mate Paulo got smoked by Leota, mostly.
Moses, what a game!
Oh,
how good was he,
mate? In that, I haven't seen a front row play more of a dominant game for a lot of years than Moses Leota played.
And that wasn't his favourite. My favourite play of his was late in the game. Did you see on the replay him try and run down Simonson?
Did you see where he was? Did you see where he was?
He was at the ruck. He was at the ruck on the start of the play.
And he's 8 meters behind when he gets tackled.
I can't believe it hasn't been mentioned anywhere. It was spectacular. He wasn't catching him. Don't get me wrong.
He wasn't gaining.
But he put his head down and went, stuff this. I'm going to try and get there.
And he was the first to Dylan Edwards.
61st minute
celebration.
Oh, it was so good. So
amazing.
Good.
And the hits just kept on coming. Anyway, Regan Campbell-Gillard and Jake Trbojevic I've got. And you could bracket that possibly with Tino. I think we're a little thin on genuine front rowers, mate.
Well, Haas decided not to play. That was a big one. That was a really big one. Losing him gave a lot of flexibility. It took a lot of flexibility away from the squad, because then Tino can play edge back row if you wanted to. But now he's locked into the middle. I've gone with Campbell-Gillard and Tino to start. If you're going to have Campbell-Gillard in your squad, he plays one position only. He starts. If you only want to use him for that first, you don't bring him off the bench. He is a guy, if you want to go 30 minutes, you can. In the right setup, he's an effective player. I'm fine with him being there. I think he has to be there. I've got Tino starting with him, so I've got a bit of a dynamic nature up front. I don't like the idea of starting Jake and Regan at the same time. They don't do a lot for me in that mix.
Okay.
If you're going to have Jake off the bench, I think he's that guy who comes on and plays 20 minutes and tackles his heart out. I don't have a spot for him at this stage, but as the tournament unfolds,
he's not in your 17.
He's not in my 17, and
wow.
I know that might sound harsh, but that's what I'm thinking. Carrigan is the first prop off the bench, playing in that middle area. I think Mal will pick Cotter because he also can cover a few other positions if he had to. He can cover and he'll give you that 15, 20 minutes of just go. That's what he'll give you. So I'm good with that. And it's really a question of what they do in the 16. I think the 17 will be Ben Hunt. I don't think there's any doubt about that, / DCE. And it's really a question of, do they pick, if Jack Wighton doesn't start in the centres, do they pick him as the third reserve and, ability to play him anywhere, play him in the back row if you had to? And the other one is a waste. But the other one's Matt Burton. Does he decide that he's someone else he can bring in as a bit of extra cover in a bunch of positions? I can see him not picking Trbojevic, Nanai. I'm surprised. Actually, probably the biggest shock for me is Lindsay Collins in the squad, because I think him and RCG are the same player. So I don't see the point in taking two of them. And Angus Crichton, if I had to pick between Angus Crichton and a Jack Wighton, I'd probably take a Jack Wighton if I was trying to fill the multiple positions sort of role, because he might have an impact.
See, for me, mate, Jack Wighton and Burton are the same player.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. So if you're going to play 4 reserves, one is Ben Hunt, and then you've got your Burton / Wighton. We used to do this all the time under Bozo. He used to always pick basically two backs. We don't have to have a massive front row rotation. If you've got Carrigan and Cotter coming off the bench, they can play big minutes if they need to.
Yeah.
I like the flexibility. And in a World Cup, you need to be able to throw someone on who might be able to change the game. You don't need another front rower. And that's why I don't have room for Jake.
Speaking of Bozo, Do you remember where he played Greg Alexander on one Kangaroo tour?
Fullback.
Incorrect.
Hooker.
He played wing.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
Is that the one where he scored 40-odd points?
I'm not sure if that was the one. There was a
fullback by then.
There was a game there where he was in number 5. Because I remember seeing the team sheet. I've got a book around here somewhere that's got the team sheet.
Yeah, it would have been
photographed.
the 1990 Kangaroo tour. I mean, mind you, we did play 50 games that tour. It's astonishing to think back to how many tests, how many tour games they played on top of test matches.
A lot of tour games.
Bring back the Kangaroo tour, but yeah, no, I'll look it up while you're going through your bench, mate.
Yeah. So look, my bench differs crazily to yours because I don't have Murray starting. And I know that you love Murray starting, and I know that you're probably going to poo-poo this, but I had Nanai starting.
So much poo-poo.
I had Nanai starting on the left edge. Now, some will argue that Latrell and Murray are a great combination on that left edge together.
Problem is, Nanai plays on the right, dude.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I'd have Martin on the left and Nanai on the right. But anyway, so my bench is made up of, pretty much similar to yours, but I've got Murray, which isn't the same as you. I've got Carrigan, I've got Tino, and I've got Ben Hunt, and I've got Burton as 18th man.
Yep.
In mind, but I've got Wighton starting at 4. So my team, and I'll go through them from 1 to 18, is Tedesco, Addo-Carr, Latrell Mitchell, Jack Wighton, Valentine Holmes on the other wing, Munster at 5'8", Cleary at halfback, Yo at 13, Nanai at 12, Liam Martin at 11, RCG at 10, Harry Grant at 9, and Jake Trbojevic at 8, with Cameron Murray, Carrigan, Tino Fasua, Ma'ali. I think that's how you say it.
That's much better than my efforts.
Ben Hunt are on the bench, and Burton at 18. But I do concede that if Murray starts, you're not going to carry Nanai on the bench. No. He's your 80-minute player, or he's one of your 80-minute forwards. So therefore, you would take another. So our teams are fairly similar. Just I've probably got one player in there that you didn't consider in Nanai. And I've got Jake as well. Yeah,
Jake.
Yep.
I can't see Burton getting 18th man, and I'll tell you this why. Because if DC ain't at number 7, he's 18th man. He's not going to disrespect him by leaving him out of the squad entirely. He'll be 18th man.
See, I hate window dressing. I don't think DC should be on the tour. But what is this, ribbons for everybody? Come on.
No, that's Angus Crichton and Lindsay Collins, mate.
Yeah.
They end up with a squad. I like the squad. I've got no issues. As I said, the other players that may have got left out, Hudson Young probably is a bit unlucky. We discussed this on the grand final review pod. Him and Lane basically got pushed out by Liam Martin, given that it was clear that Nanai was obviously to be there in Mal's team.
Yeah.
The other player that I thought might end up going, and he's ended up playing for Tonga now, is Dave Fafita, just because he offers something different. If they needed, 20 minutes of something off the bench, I like him more than a Crichton. I like him more than a Nanai. Like just in that role. And I know that Mal is a big fan, obviously, given he's the head of culture there at the Titans and paid him $1.2 million or whatever. He's ended up going and he's now playing for Tonga. Other players that I had on the list that missed out, that haven't really been talked about, the 2 wingers for PNG, mate. Alex Johnson and Xavier Coates are unlucky to miss out to Murray Taulagi, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that.
What's Alex Johnson got to do more? Score more tries?
Yeah. Look, I think I'd probably have Coates ahead of Johnson. But what about Selwyn Cobbo? What's his deal?
I don't know whether he pulled out for any particular reason, but he missed out as well. Even Corey
Has he just
Oates
flamed out? He flamed out at the end of the year, didn't he?
Yeah. He actually played in the PM's game. So
did he? Okay.
That's surprising. Dane Gagai has fallen off the representative cliff.
Yeah, he's finished.
Didn't even get mentioned. Jai Arrow, I know, did a groin in the prelim, so I'd say that's probably why he's out. But I thought he might have got in ahead of a Lindsay Collins or a Crichton. given the strength of his form at the end of the year. And actually, to be fair to Angus Crichton, he actually played really well at the back end of the year. He really did.
He did.
I just saw what he did in Origin when he needed to step up for us, and he didn't. And that was like, if that's the role you're going to play for Australia, wasn't the greatest audition. The other player who should have put his hand up to play in the test matches because it could have taken care of his suspension is Ryan Madison. Sorry, I can't finish that comment. Maddo, Australia, hilarious.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that just for a moment.
Yeah.
I know we're going off-piste a little bit, but let's talk about Ryan Madison. He's obviously got the poops with the NRL because he's got a fine. It's his third of the year. So they've been warned that they go up incrementally. I think it was a pretty poor crusher. It was hardly a crusher. You know, going forward, let me just go off track here.
Go for it.
I think going forward, the referee, when a player backs into another player, has to yell held straight away, right? But there has to be a proviso that the player who is in the position to do the crusher is allowed to reposition and take him to the ground, because players do this on purpose. They will run and back into a player, and this can only be good for them because they can get a pass away or they'll get a crusher awarded to them, right? The defender can't do anything. If he tries to take him to the ground from where he is, there's a high percentage there's going to be a crusher. I don't think Madison, there was no intent whatsoever, right? And I think he was desperately unlucky. But the NRL has to do something about this because they're getting coached to do it. Players are getting coached to do it. Get in there, turn around, push backwards with your legs. And the reason why Madison probably tried to take him to the ground was because he's still getting drive off the legs.
Yeah.
You know, he's still getting pushed. So, but Ryan Madison electing to sit 3 games out because the NRL gave him the option of a $4,000 fine for his third grade 1 infringement of the year. Now, if we believe he's on about 600 grand, it means he makes $12,000 every week of the year. 12 grand, right? And he's going to sit out 3 NRL games, so not to pay $4,000. So he's going to pocket 36 grand and elect not to pay the $4,000 fine for something that, was pretty mediocre that he got cited for, but it is what it is. It was in a grand final. You know, I tend to agree with Mark Geyer on this. There's, you know, it's not a good optic, is it? It's not a real good thing that a bloke is going to sit down on a sideline for 3 weeks while he's getting paid 12 grand a week from the club, so he doesn't have to pay a $4,000 fine. Do you want to play? You want to play next to that bloke?
I don't know. He wanted to play with the Dolphins apparently as well. Anyway, Maddo. My issue with Maddo is that he brought up the Jerome Luai kick as the reason why
which wasn't a kick.
Suspended. But there's another crusher in the same game with Papali'i who didn't even get cited. Bring that up. Yeah.
Well, we know now when the videos surfaced that Luai's kick was not a kick.
He actually does get him in the. He doesn't kick him in. That foot doesn't kick him. The shin does. But
he kind of leans against him with the shin. But
there is lead up to that though. That informed the whole kick narrative. It's not like it just came out of the blue all of a sudden. He stood there. He was having a crack at Papali'i for pushing him in the back. Quick note, we've got to wrap up because our Zoom's almost over, and this is the Australian portion of the pod. But effectively, I think we gave. It's going to sound harsh, but I think we gave Gutho a bit too much raps in the review podcast. I've rewatched that game. He's a weak link in that team. Sorry. I didn't like what I saw on the replay. I thought he actually played poorly.
Look, I think his effort was there. He definitely, his effort was, he tried too hard, I think, mate, given what I've seen. And I still think, and I've said this to you away from the pod, I still think there's an issue with he and Mitchell Moses. They seem to be at loggerheads quite a lot. They tend to argue on the field a lot. If you watch the back play and watch their interactions, and I know that they're both probably very, very competitive, but the team has to belong to one player. It can't belong to both of them. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to put them on the chopping block here and say that while ever Gutherson and Moses are together, neither of them will win a grand final.
That's a nice way to end the podcast, because neither of them made the World Cup squad. I can tell you that. I
don't think they complement each other at all. And you remember a few weeks ago I said to you, Parramatta don't make the final. I'll tell you what I think it is. That little combination there is part of the problem, part of a bigger problem. And also they need another front rower.
All right, that's the podcast. We've done one, but guess what, everybody? We're going to do two. We're going to wrap this one up now, episode 263. That's the Australian World Cup. We're going to do a lot of more podcasts, hopefully, Cocksmith. Are you committing to World Cup podcasts, my friend? I'm
committed. I'm committed. I'm with you, bro.
When are they letting you out?
I'm not going to sit out 3 weeks on the sideline.
Good. No, I wasn't going to pay you $4,000, that's for sure. Or $12,000 a week. Your little maths. You must be earning close to $600,000 a year if you knew what the number was divided by 52.
Mate, I don't know. I think Aaron Woods, and I don't necessarily go to Aaron Woods for advice or life advice, but I think what he said yesterday about that whole Madison thing, that some blokes would pay $50,000 to play an NRL game, and I reckon there's more players out there with his way of thinking than the opposite, and I just don't get it. I don't understand. You're getting all crappy about getting a $4,000 fine. Just pay it, mate. He must be the tightest human in the world, Madison. He must be. Think about it. Yeah. He's a bloke that gets $12,000 every single week. That's nearly $2,000 a day to play professional rugby league and not have to go in big ditches.
Calculator, you're on fire.
I know. 100% I am.
More numbers. The World Cup starts on Sunday morning, the 16th, so about a week and a bit away. England, Samoa. The games are going to be played sort of either really late at night our time or really early morning the next day. So it's a 12:30 a.m. start on the Sunday morning, England, Samoa, and then at 5:30 Australia, Fiji is the first time you'll see the Kangaroos running out there. They're playing at 5:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Just remember, everybody, if you're in,
I can't commit to all the pool games, mate, but I will commit to every Aussie game. I will watch them all.
I think that's what we'll try and do, is go through the Aussie game. We're not going to go after every the cracking Jamaica Ireland game. Although, to be fair, I can't wait to see Luke Keely play for Ireland. That's going to be fun watching a player who's this much better than everybody else on his side, and see whether he can drag him across. I'm interested in those matches, but that's a 3 a.m. start. That'll be on the replay. That's the podcast, 263, Australian Kangaroos reaction to the team. We'll be back when you listen to this on the podcast with another one. The first episode, I think, Cocksmith, of Recruitment Whisperers. It's finally happening.
That's what I've been living for the last 6 months, mate, waiting for this moment.
Take us out, buddy.
Mate, I will talk to you in about 10 minutes. Pepsi.
Not the Footy show.
Look, we want to promote the international game, so I don't have any problem with the player playing state of origin and then selecting the nation that he wants to play for. I think that's the way we're going to grow the international game. And Brad Fittler, the coach of the New South Wales team, has been very outspoken about the criteria. We did look at it last year. Unfortunately, COVID interrupted that investigation. We will continue to look at it because we want to have a very strong state of origin, but we also want to have a very strong international game. And I think that look, there's a few tweaks we can do to the criteria where we can get both objectives satisfied.
In what sense?
Well, looking at if a player basically is born and bred in Australia, he can still play state of origin and select the team that he plays for internationally is one of the areas that we can look at. And look, you've got the Tier A and Tier B nations at the moment. We have to look at that. But look, I don't want to preempt anything, but we'll certainly be reviewing it with the assistance of the two State of Origin coaches and Mal, naturally, to make sure we've got the best model, especially considering the growth of the game in the Pacific and to an extent where England's going, which are probably not as strong as they've been in the past.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Off the Footy Show.
You been sleeping over there?
Pepsi.